think to myself, you know what? Maybe we won't talk about Ukraine. Maybe I'll talk about anime. Maybe I'll talk about something else. Just it's just insane shit just keeps happening on basically a daily basis at this point. So it's kind of hard for me to even really like not talk about it. And this whole like Moscow terror attack just keeps getting weirder and weirder. Now, let's talk about optics for a minute. Because optics are one of the big things that I always kind of come down to, wherein if you're not really sure about the exact facts of a situation, maybe you don't have access to them, maybe there's a lot of confusion, maybe it's a he said, she said thing, you can at least try to look at how are different people behaving, what are the different motivations involved, and stuff like that. And if somebody's reaction is to have an unhinged cover up, that kind of is a bit sussy to me. To be honest, that's very very sussy. And this is what happened when we had the whole ethics in video game journalism thing. Remember that? Remember how the immediate response was just to go into a full-on, like, insane panic mode, start screaming, talk about how you're going to cover everything up, like just all this stuff. Because they've gone completely unhinged. So we're going to look at some of this because nothing about this makes any kind of sense. And the denials actually make everything make even less sense. And like, once again, I'm not like a lot of people in these circles where I think that Islamic terrorism just doesn't exist. There's a lot of Islamists in the world. There's a lot of evil people in the world. There's a lot of stuff that can be hard. But I don't know. When you act the way they do towards like things, it does kind of make you wonder. So, we've been hearing a lot about how Russia was warned. America sent the warning to Russia. They told Russia that this attack was coming. Now, when was this attack issued? This warning issued? I have the warning right here. I'll make sure to put the link to this in the chat. Once again, I am using a far right Russian bot source that is called the U.S. Embassy in Russia's official website, which is once again an extremist source. So this is the big warning they supposedly issued that everyone's referring to. The embassy is monitoring reports that extremists have imminent plans to target large gatherings in Moscow, to include concerts, and U.S. citizens should be advised to avoid large gatherings over the next 48 hours. Wow, I mean, it mentions extremists. It doesn't say what kind of extremists. It could be any kind of extremists. Thinking about it for a second, who is the kind of extremist that Russia in the last 2 years has had carrying out attacks like this? It's not Islamists, that's for sure. They're talking about concerts. They're talking about large gatherings. The U.S. warned them. The U.S., they had all this info. They knew this was going to happen, but they told Russia. They told Russia they weren't involved with this at all. Now, keep in mind, the thing to keep in mind when we're looking at this is the next 48 hours. So there's a time. So they even told them when the attack was going to happen. And this was published on March 7th. So let me double check. What day did the terror attack happen again? I feel like there was like some time there. There's some time in between this. This happened on March 22nd. Is that within 48 hours of March 7th? No, is that within 72 hours of March 7th? No, is that within a week of March 7th? No. Well, if by 48 hours they meant 2 weeks, then yeah, they gave Russia a warning. They gave Russia a warning, all right. Now, the other thing to keep in mind that makes this whole thing even weirder is if we want to say that, okay, well, Russia ignored this warning, it was a general warning, they should have been on their guard. Well, the U.S. didn't issue another warning to their citizens, right? Like, they didn't issue, like, they just said, okay, you guys, if you guys can make it the next 48 hours, everything's going to be okay. There's no more danger. You can go back to concerts. You can go back to stuff like that. So, and I don't think this is really that big of a gap of jump of logic, as it were. But if they didn't issue another warning saying that people should avoid concerts after the 48 hours is over, then why, like, I don't get it. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Like, if why wouldn't they? So is the narrative that they told Russia that there was going to be a mass shooting on March 22nd, but they didn't tell their own citizens? I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm having trouble explaining this. It's just it's kind of hard sometimes. It's kind of hard sometimes. So, okay, let me just take another step back. So, they gave a warning to U.S. citizens on March 7th that there could be a terrorist attack in the next 48 hours. Okay, makes sense. They did not issue a renewal of this. They did not, to the best of my knowledge, issue another warning. They didn't say stay on your guard. The implication that I got as someone who speaks English as my first language is the attack was going to be somewhere between March 7th and probably March 10th, if there was going to be one. And multiple weeks had passed since then. So they're saying now that they gave Russia a warning, and I think this is the warning that they're at least this is what the media is saying the warning is that they're referring to. Now, they didn't give another warning for their citizens because I guess they don't care. So I guess the cope is we don't care about our citizens, so we didn't tell them there was going to be a terrorist attack, but we told Russia there was going to be a terrorist attack. That doesn't make sense. And then we have this. So this is, once again, from a far-right pro-Russia source, the White House, House's official website, with National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby. So he said, did the U.S. have any prior knowledge of this attack in Moscow, given that the U.S. Embassy had issued a warning beforehand? I'm not aware of any advanced knowledge that we had of this. The embassy warned... Okay, so then the person asked again. The embassy warned of imminent attack in Moscow by extremists. I don't think that was related to this specific attack. So I guess, like, this was just... Like, this didn't happen. This is just like he was wrong, he was mistaken. Why would the National Security Communications Advisor have any kind of insider knowledge into national security events that are going on during a national security crisis? There's no way that he would know that. So the National Security Advisor, whatever his title is, said that this warning is unrelated to the other warning that they gave that they didn't post about and they didn't tell their own citizens. Do you get what I mean? Like, do you get why none of this makes any kind of sense? Like, it's just, I don't know, it's pretty sussy. It's pretty sussy to me. And once again, like, why is their first... like here we even have it, the travel security. There was only 2 updates in the last month. On March 7th, avoid large gatherings for the next 48 hours. Message for U.S. citizens, the terrorist attack. It's why would you cover it up? Like, that's what I mean. Like, it's the fact that their immediate response is to just lie, obfuscate, and say things that make no sense makes me suspicious. And we'll get to another aspect of this. So the independent media is all saying at once, let's see here. No evidence Ukraine involved. Okay. So it's interesting. Let's take a look at what the independent news is saying. There is no evidence that the Ukraine was involved in the Moscow attack. No evidence so far. Putin links Ukraine to Moscow without evidence. No evidence. Let's see here. Without evidence. No, it's kind of interesting. We have, let's see, how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess that's the same one. Let's see how many we have with the same. Like 5. Literally everybody has published no Ukrainian involvement. None. They just it's interesting how there we go. It's interesting that all these various sources all have basically the same title, and they knew about it. Like, they just immediately there's no evidence. Now, here's the thing that I don't get, and maybe you guys could correct me if I'm wrong, is how do they know that there's no evidence? Let's before we even like get into this. How do they know what the Russian intelligence services have? You know what I mean? Like, they haven't, like, the Russians haven't released the results of their investigation yet. We haven't seen any of the evidence they gathered. How can they know the findings of the investigation before it's even conducted? That's a little weird, isn't it? But by them saying no evidence, as someone who speaks English as my first language, no evidence seems to me that there would be no evidence. And they're saying that as an absolute fact. Okay, rejected claims that could be involved. So they're not even saying we don't think there's involved. We're not even saying there's not credible evidence at the moment. There is no chance that they could be involved. How do they know that? I don't know. How did in fact, we know to be the case that ISIS Special K was behind it. So that's cool. They know the results of the investigation that the FSB is doing before it was even launched. Also, they somehow know that ISIS Special K is behind it, and ISIS Special K wasn't working with anybody. Let's see this. ISIS K was solely responsible. The U.S. government, okay, so the U.S. government has said ISIS is solely responsible for it. ISIS bears sole. They know this. They somehow know this, that no one else other than ISIS was involved with this. There was no international cartels. There was no, like, the Russian mafia wasn't involved with this. Iran wasn't involved with this. Just ISIS. literally no one other than ISIS. Like, how do they even know that? I mean, okay, let's pretend that Ukraine wasn't involved with this. Let's just say that they weren't. I mean, other people could be involved. Like, it could be drug smugglers. It could be the Russian mafia was involved. They probably had to pay people to smuggle weapons. Maybe pay some shady people to get the weapons. I don't know. I just feel like for an operation like this, there has to be more than just people from ISIS involved. Unless they're saying that, like, materially aiding. Okay, Adam here is like a jokester who's talking about ISIS was destroyed. ISIS was destroyed. This is ISIS Special K. This is ISIS Special K. This is something completely different. Okay, so let's just go through this article because this is the narrative, and we're going to see if this narrative makes any kind of sense whatsoever. Let's see. He didn't accuse Ukraine authorities of involvement at the Kora City Hall on the edge of Moscow. Said a window had been prepared for men to cross the border without offering evidence. Wow. I agree. Like, how could someone make a claim without offering evidence? It's almost like ISIS bears sole responsibility for this attack without offering any evidence. Not being sarcastic for a minute, has the U.S. offered any real evidence that, like, ISIS was solely responsible for it? Because I'm gonna have to see receipts on that one. Ukraine called it a false flag operation by the Kremlin. With, it's interesting that they, it's almost as if there's a certain bias here where they're saying Putin didn't offer any evidence that that people were going to sneak over the border into Ukraine, but Ukraine calling it a false flag operation, that doesn't need evidence. It's a Telegram post, posted the photograph and 4 men. So yeah, that's if the Islamic State puts that up, then it does. Like, once again, it's ISIS, like, Islamic terrorists do stuff like this all the time. So I'm open to the possibility that it was them. It's just when you start going into this and, like, the basic logic doesn't add up and you start acting in full-on panicked, deranged cover-up mode, that makes me very suspicious. Once again, it was very much like with the whole election ethics and video game journalism thing, wherein they said there was no evidence. Like, they didn't say that the evidence people presented that there was problems was false or fake or wrong. They just claimed it didn't exist, even though you could clearly see it existed. Once again, you could accept the point that all of it was fake or all of it was a coincidence, and that's a legitimate position. But the claim it just didn't exist is solipsism. Like, that's just retarded. That's like some Descartes, I think, therefore I am tier shit. Authorities canceled public events at times. Okay. ISIS bears sole responsibility for the attack. She reiterated that the U.S. shared information with Russia early in March about a planned terrorist attack in Moscow. It pointed again to a public warning on March 7th. The public warning, which Bloomberg, being the journalists that they are, doesn't point out, that this was a warning for 48 hours. And the White House, by their own admission, as we just looked at, said that the warning that they gave on that date was not related to this. So, who's lying? Like, they're lying because they're misrepresenting that. The State Department is referencing something that someone else in the government's, like, I'm sorry if I'm not making sense, people. It's rough. It's rough. So, uh, uh, have imminent plans to target large gatherings in Moscow, including concert. It doesn't. It doesn't include the timeline. Um, like why? I don't know. Like if okay, let's just take a step back. So if I was running the U.S. media, U.S. State Department, here's what I'd say: our intelligence heard that there was going to be an attack on March 7th. Now, to my understanding, the Chorus Theater had a big concert, but on like March 9th or something, the Russians apparently had taken the warning and that there was a bunch of security there. So someone can confirm that. So there was a bunch of security there. Nothing happened, and then they figured that it had passed. So what America could say is, okay, well, we had evidence, we gave it to them. It looks like they prevented that terror attack. It looks like ISIS rescheduled, or it's something unrelated, or something like that, and we didn't know about that one. But if we had have known about it, we would have told them. Like, that's all they have to say. No one expects the CIA to be omnipotent, especially in Russia. Like, if they had just said, we heard about the first attack, obviously Russia took precautions, they called it off, then they carried it out later when the guard was down, we didn't have any specific information. Do you get what I mean? Like, that sounds reasonable to me. That makes sense. But rather than just say that, we have this bizarre series of contradictory statements that don't make any sense. And I like this at the end here. At the same time, Ukraine has mounted a camp. Okay, this is amazing. Okay, so let's just look at this again. Let's look at this again. Putin said a window had been prepared for men to cross the border without offering any evidence. And then the last paragraph. At the same time, Ukraine has mounted a campaign of attacks inside Russia, with its troops struggling on the battlefield amid delays in vital aid from the U.S. and allies. Drones have hit factories and oil refineries, while attackers in border regions have staged raids. But no, guys, Putin is crazy, but they say here Ukraine is actively attacking inside Russia. Like, why would you even have that here? So, okay, so let's just take a step back. So, let's say you have a city where you have the Bloods and the Crips, and the Bloods and the Crips are in it, and they get into firefights basically every week. People get shot every week, and a body turns up that has been shot. Now, according to the logic we're seeing here, if you suspect that maybe the Bloods or the Crips are involved with it because they're always the ones behind it and they're actively engaging in a certain behavior, that's no evidence. You're crazy for thinking that. Like, if you find a bunch of beheaded corpses on the border with Mexico, you're crazy for thinking that drug cartels were involved with it. Like, that's just too far. Like, why would you think that? Why would you think that the beheaded corpses would have anything to do with the cartels? I mean, it's just because it's them in 90% of cases and there's fire, that doesn't mean there's smoke. And once again, it's this sole responsibility. But I hope people get the point I'm trying to make. Like, I haven't even talked about the actual evidence. I'm just saying, if this is the way you're dealing with it, it looks really bad and it looks really suspicious. And it makes me way more suspicious than I would have otherwise. Like I said, if the U.S. had have just said, We gave the warning for the first attack. Obviously, it didn't happen. It got delayed or rescheduled, and then it happened. We didn't know that it got rescheduled. We would have told them if it would have. It's a sad thing. We're sorry we couldn't be more helpful. That's all they had to say. We didn't have to go through this like bizarre saga of strange statements and lying about things. So we have ISIS K, ISIS Special K. No Ukrainian involvement. None. How Ukraine war distracted Moscow from ISIS Special K. The backstory of ISIS Special K. Putin will use the Moscow massacre for his war in... it's interesting how the independent media, they all post the exact same thing at the exact same time. Funny how that goes. Let's see here. What is it? Is it the ISB or the FSB in Ukraine? It is the... I don't think it's them. It's the other one. It's not... I'm just trying to remember what the other one is called. The GRU? Because the other day, I'm just trying to find where it is. Security Services. Yes, the SBU. Okay. SBU. Okay. Okay, so this is, we have some bad optics here. Let's take a look at this statement published in the far right, the far right Kiev Independent. SBU head predicts future operations in Russia, says Ukraine never repeats itself. So this was like from today. Ukraine will carry out more operations in Russia and will change tactics in order to remain one step ahead of Russia. Vasil Meliuk, the head of the Security Service of Ukraine, said on air March 25th. The SBU and Ukraine's military intelligence have engaged in an increasingly active campaign against targets within Russia, including an uptick of strikes against oil refineries. Why would you publish this? Why would you put this out like 2 days after the fucking terrorist attack? Like it's insane. Like, even if they're completely unrelated, once again, just optics. Why is the head of your intelligence service giving interviews, these vaguely threatening interviews? Let's see. Russia should expect more attacks. Ukraine never repeats itself. He added, since the beginning of the full-scale war, the SBU and other security agencies have been responsible for destroying over 800 Russian tanks as well as other armored vehicles. Let's see here. Let's see if it... Okay, so it doesn't... Okay, so yeah, we have all these plans. Let's see if there's more of it. Okay, let's see. So this is Sputnik, but let's see what this is a reference to. I'm just trying to find where this is. Okay. Just trying to find where this interview is. I'm just trying to find where it is. Let's see. I'm just trying to find where this is. Where this original article is. Let's see. I'm just trying to find it. I'm just trying to find where this specific quote is from because Sputnik is, like, I think funded by the Russian state. I'm just trying to see if there was where this article is actually from. Uh, uh, let's see here. There we go. Okay, ICTV. It's ICTV. Let's see where this is. Um, okay. The head of the SBU provided details of the attempts on a bunch of different officials. He said the SBU will not take official responsibility for these operations. However, he made it clear that Ukraine special forces were involved. In an interview, he said that MP Ilya Kiva was killed by a 9 by 19 millimeter weapon. They shot him in the chest area, followed by a controlled shot to the head. Uh, Vladilin Tatarsky was killed with a grenade that was a gift that was stuffed with explosives. You remember this cafeteria in St. Petersburg and the statuette he was given? There was 400 grams of thermobar, and it worked like a razor. Let's see here. LPR, Minister of Internal Affairs, was seriously wounded as a result of a tank mine explosion. He was on his way to his country house, and on the way, the tank mine went off. His driver, also a war criminal, was driving that day. The driver uh, died. We killed the prosecutor general. We killed this other guy. Um, so he did this like this big thing where he talked about all the like assassinations and terror attacks they've done inside Ukraine. Um, yeah, it's why would you put that out though? like like Russia is, and this is on Ukraine television. This isn't like I don't know. Uh, so 2 days after a huge terrorist attack in Russia, you're going to give an interview talking about how you're carrying out huge terrorist attacks in Russia. Like, it's a cinematic universe. I don't know what else to call it, guys. Like this is like something a supervillain would do in a movie. It's literally like there's this plot thread that's being thrown out there to tell you the audience. It's like the director is just winking at you, the audience, and telling you something. It's so weird. It's this is just this is where we are at the moment. So I don't know. So this is that's what I wanted to cover. Um, Once again, even if nothing like comes out of this, even if like Ukraine wasn't involved, like the optics of that is fucked. Like the optics of saying that we're going to carry out terrorist attacks inside of Russia the day afterwards. And once again, this isn't some. This is the head of the SBU. This is the head of Ukrainian counterintelligence. This isn't. This isn't Putin. This isn't. Wow! Look at that nose. That that is something. But yeah, that's it. So I hope people enjoyed that. That's just a little thing I wanted to cover.